Now, if you ever use your overdraft, you're most likely going to be paying more for this than any other kind of borrowing. More expensive than credit cards, more expensive than loans. With most banks, it's a huge 40%, well, just under 40%. So Bank of Scotland, Halifax, HSBC, Lloyds, Nationwide, TSB, they're all 39.9%. Not far below that, Barclays at 35%, Co-op 35.9%. This is where the most of the banks, they are charging a huge amount of cash every time you go below zero on your bank account. And give you an idea of how much money that could be costing you over a year. If you have £100, always overdrawn by £100 for a year at 39.9%, that's going to cost you just under 40 quid over a year, £39.90, right? 250 quid, well, then just under £100 cost over the year. If you have £1,000, it's going to cost you £400, just under 400 quid over 12 months. Now, I know most people who are overdrawn, that balance goes up and down. It's not necessarily the same amount. Again, it shows you how expensive this can be and why it's not a good idea, if you can avoid it, to use your overdraft. Now, you might be actually a way you can quickly resolve any overdraft problems you've got, and that's if you have any savings. That's the best thing to do. If you have any savings and you have an overdraft that you're using, is to use those savings and wipe out as much of that overdraft as you can. Because yes, you might be getting, if you follow the kind of updates that we're always given here and on becleveryourcash.com/savings, for those top paying rates, maybe 5.2% or something on your easy active savings, which sounds great. It's better than it has been for a long time. But conversely, you're paying 40% on your overdraft, then you're wiping out all of that interest, if not more. So you're better off taking those savings and getting rid of that overdraft. And if you do then need to spend something later on, maybe you have to dip into some form of borrowing, ideally not these expensive overdrafts, but that can be, again, a great first step you can take. But that might not be possible. You might not have any savings at all. That's probably maybe why you are in your overdraft, because you don't have enough money to get through. And you might be thinking, well, what do I do instead? Well, what I share with you in this one now is to some of the different bank accounts, the top bank accounts out there, where you can get a better rate, potentially even 0% interest on your overdraft with your account. And let's start with that one first of all, the best one out there. And this is only going to be available to some of you because it's Nationwide's Flex Direct current account. Now, this account, you can only get this special introductory offers the first time you have this account, and only for 12 months. Some of you might already have taken this out in the past when they've been offering higher rates of interest on your savings, so around 5% and so on. But if you haven't done that and you've not used it for an overdraft before, then you can get a 0% overdraft for 12 months, potentially up to £1,500. Quite how much you'll get will be decided when you do your application. But fortunately, in the same way when I talked to you guys about applying for new credit cards, do an eligibility search before that, which has a soft search on your credit report to give an indication of what you'll get, you can do the same with this current account. So they'll tell you, will you get the overdraft? Because again, some people might not get it, but will you get it? And then how much you're likely to get. If you then want to proceed, then there will be a hard credit check on your credit file. Same with all the other bank accounts we're going to talk about right now. But that's a good thing to do. Potentially, a really, really decent sized overdraft to help you clear that debt, or at least reduce the cost of that debt. Get the interest down to zero, which means you can just start having, rather than getting bigger and bigger with those interest payments, you can start doing what you can to reduce it, putting more money into it from your earnings every month. Any savings you can pick up, put them in there, and get it back down to zero before that 12 months is up. Because after 12 months, you will go to that huge 39.9%. This is just a temporary measure just for 12 months. And you can potentially have two of these, a personal one and a joint one. But obviously, if you have a joint current account with your partner, whoever it might be, they will be financially linked to you. So if they don't have any problems with debts right now, then linking you isn't necessarily a good idea. But I suppose if you have joint finances aren't great and you both get this account, then that's potentially some rather large overdrafts you can get at 0%. So worth considering that if you're on a particularly high overdraft situation. But that's top one, the Nationwide Flex Direct account. That is pretty much the only one which gives a sizable 0% overdraft. But there is another way to get a 0% buffer, a much, much smaller amount. And these are probably better suited to those of you who just occasionally go overdrawn. Maybe that's just the end of the month, just in the day or two before payday. You don't quite have enough in your account. So you go into the red and the pay comes in and wipes that all out. This could be quite handy there. Or maybe you're someone who likes to sort of dance around with all the different current accounts, find all the different tips and the tricks that I share with you, which generally shouldn't be a problem. But occasionally, if you're moving money from one account to the other and it's not quite there in time or for whatever reason, or maybe an unpredictable income, so you're not quite sure when the money's coming in, you know it's coming, but there might be some days where it's not there. Small buffer might help you. The key one here is with First Direct. They will give you 250 quid at 0%, and that is permanent. That's not, they could obviously change the rules at some point, but it's not limited to any set time. 250 quid. If you borrow more than £250, it goes up to that huge 39.9% again. So this is just a small amount. Again, not a bad one there. Plus, this one often has regular switching deals. There is a £175 switching deal running right now. So if you do have a slightly larger overdraft, then you can switch in. That money comes paid into your account. That will reduce what you have as well. So it's not a bad thing to consider there. Now, there is a couple of others here, and I'll tell you about them just for completion, but they're not necessarily ones that are probably worth going for. The TSB Spend and Save Plus current account has a £100 0% overdraft, so a much, much smaller buffer. And the problem with this account is it has a £3 fee every single month. Now, if you do use the debit card 20 times during a month and do a few other bits and pieces, then you get a £5 reward. So you will be sort of hopefully not losing money from that £3 fee. You're actually making a £2 profit. But again, £100 is not going to be sort of make or break for most people at 0%. But if you have that account, it's worth knowing about. It could be a handy buffer. There's another one again, and not many of you are going to be able to get this one because it's quite the account has quite a high threshold to get it. This is the Barclays Premier current account. You have to be earning 75 grand a year or have £100,000 saved or invested with Barclays. If you have this account, then you get a 0% buffer on the first £500 that's in there. Again, it seems a bit strange that the people who are earning the most amount of money in order to have this account and have large amounts in savings or investments would therefore need a £500 overdraft. But again, it's worth knowing about it there if you sometimes something's coming along and you might be overdrawn slightly. But again, if you're regularly going to be overdrawn by 500 quid, then are you really, things you could probably be doing with your income and your savings to avoid that. But anyway, to let you know that is there. So that's pretty much it. You might find an odd one here or there which will give you something, but pretty much with 0% ones. However, there is another option I'm going to tell you about, and this is again not something to choose a bank for most of us, but if you are not eligible for those 0% deals, or there's no other ways that you might be able to reduce the cost of an overdraft that you have, or even maybe another debt elsewhere that is substantially around the same sort of limit, then there are a couple of accounts that will offer a kind of low rate overdraft. Now, there's no guarantee you'll get their lowest rate because they would look at your situation, they'll do that eligibility search, that hard search eventually when you actually properly apply. Again, you can check what you're likely to get before that goes through. And you might be able to kind of bring the cost down from 40% to maybe as low as sort of anywhere between 15 and 25%, something like that we're sort of looking at, which would be more affordable, but still, again, not a cheap way to borrow. The best one of these is Starling Bank. Now, you have to, the normal Starling Bank, when you apply for it, there is no overdraft and no hard search. You only get a hard search if you say you want to go for the overdraft. And they'll give you either 15%, 25% or 35%. So again, 35%, you don't want to go for that. That's not going to be really any significantly better than the others. 25%, it might not be too bad, I suppose, if you've got a large overdraft. But again, you probably can do better than that by looking at maybe like a money transfer credit card at 0% or maybe even a loan. But again, there are risks associated with that. But that 15%, if you can get that and you have a longer term debt, then at least it gets it more affordable than it would be if it was at those high rates. That's Starling Bank. Not too far behind that is Monzo. Monzo will give 19%, 29% or 39%. And again here, the only one you'd want to be considering slightly maybe there is the 19% one. That puts it pretty much on par with a number of credit cards, or credit cards might be slightly higher than that. But again, it's something to consider. Now, I told you at the beginning about using your savings to clear your debt. So I did mention briefly this money transfer credit card as well. I will mention that again now because that might be a better option than those latter two cheaper overdrafts that I've mentioned. And this is a credit card where you apply for the credit card if you're successful. And there aren't many of these, but if you're successful, they will transfer a lump sum to your current account. And there will be a fee for this, a small fee between 3 and 4%. But then you will owe that money they've transferred on that credit card. But that credit card will be at 0% interest for a set amount of time. It could be maybe they've got a little shorter in length, as we've seen with a number of balance transfer credit cards. shorter in length, but you could maybe get a year, maybe 18 months at 0%, which means you've got the opportunity there to clear it, to try and clear it as fast as you can without it obviously adding on that kind of 40% every time, which it would be in its current account. So that's something else you could consider before looking at those kind of non-0% overdrafts. So hopefully this isn't going to be something that most of you need to worry about. It's certainly something that if you do occasionally dip into the red, you should be looking for one of those buffers. And if you have a larger debt, absolutely recommend you look at that Nationwide Flex Direct account for that first year.